can. Anyway, let's get started then. All right, so the first important formula that we have to be aware of is the one we started touching on last night, which is earnings is equal to principal times rate. The amount of interest you earn in a savings account is equal to the amount of principal you have in the savings account times the rate. The earnings, or the amount of commission you earn when you have a transaction, is equal to the price of the property times the rate of commission. So earnings is equal to principal times rate. And what we have to do with this is we have to manipulate it in all different directions. So again, we got to look at what's principal. We're going to define principal on the left-hand side of the equal sign. And so principal is equal to, on the left-hand side of the equal sign, earnings divided by rate. And then if we want to put rate on the left-hand side of the equal sign, we're going to say rate is equal to earnings divided by principal. So we have to remember those three things. And again, it's a lot of the math we're going to do is going to use these things. Now, I was shown this little circle, and it was earnings, principal, rate, and there was a dividing sign here, okay? And this X is a multiplication sign. And whatever you wanted to find, you put your finger over what you wanted to find, in this case, rate. And then what's the formula for rate? It's earnings divided by principal. I guess, Nancy, we lost you there for a second, so I hope you're back. Okay. So that brings us again, if we were looking for earnings, we would, if we're looking for rate, we would put our finger over rate, and then we would do what it tells us to do, and it's earnings divided by principal. And same circle, earnings, principal, rate, and there's a times sign here and a divided sign here. If we're looking for principal, we put our finger over principal, and we do earnings divided by rate. So again, you can memorize it that way. You can get that tattooed on your underneath your arm so you can look at it. But it's just these three formulas. Earnings is equal to principal times rate. Principal is equal to earnings divided by rate, and rate is equal to earnings divided by principal. We're going to use those a lot, so we got to get used to them, and they're not that hard. Next thing is measurements. So it is absolutely positively for sure that on the test, they're just going to ask you a question: how many square feet is in an acre? And actually, this is we need to put a 2 up here, because what that means is 1 acre is equal to 43,560 feet to the second power, or square feet. That's why we call it square feet, not because of the shape of the size, but because it's feet to the second power, because it's a measurement of area. An area is one dimension times another dimension, and then the 2 dimensions times each other, or that dimension to the second power. We also have to know that 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. 1 yard is equal to 3 feet. And we're going to extrapolate that out to say that 1 square yard, so 1 yard to the second power, is going to be equal to 9 square feet, 9 feet to the second power. So 1 square yard is equal to 9 square feet. Why is it 9? Because it's that dimension 3, which is 3 feet in a yard, 3 times 3, and it's foot times foot, and foot times foot is foot squared. And then we also have one more that we have to do, cubic yards, because cubic yards are how we measure concrete, and a cubic yard is 3 times 3 times 3. So 1 cubic yard is equal to 27 cubic feet. Why do we need to know that? Because you order concrete by the cubic yard. You order dirt by the cubic yard. Why do we have to know that 1 square yard is equal to 9 square feet? Because in a good furniture store or a good carpet store, you order carpet by the square yard. You don't order it by the square feet. You do order carpet by the square feet in Kmart. And the reason they do that is they're hoping you don't know how to do the conversion. And so you think the Kmart carpet is cheaper, because the conversion is 9 to 1. And they're hoping that you don't see that. Maybe you think the conversion is 3 to 1, and so you're going to be paying 3 times too much for your carpet in Kmart. Again, these we're going to have to use, and they come into play in real life, whether you're ordering concrete, whether you're ordering a dumpster, whether you're ordering dirt for cubic yards and on carpet or flooring or even your roof. Did you ever hear on the roof when they say how many squares are on the roof? When a contractor is estimating the roof side, what he's talking about is square yards. So we have to know how to convert from square feet to square yards. The next thing is loan to value ratio. You're going to have a question about loan to value ratio. So the loan to value ratio is equal to the loan amount divided by the appraised value or the sales price, whichever is lower. So on loan to value ratio, they're always going to try to trick you because they're going to give you an appraised value that's lower than the sales price. And we're going to either use the appraised value or the sales price, whichever is lower. What that means is if you pay too much for a house, if you pay more for the house than it's worth, the bank is not going to accept the risk because the bank only accepts the risk on which of these two is lower. And I have an example on this property that's down here that I'm still negotiating contracts on. This is a $692,000 property in New Brunswick, and they're telling you right here, the buyer must waive the appraisal contingency because they know that the sales price, in this case, the sales price is going to be $620,000. They know it's only going to appraise at $500,000. So they're telling the buyer right off the top, your loan to value ratio is going to be way out of whack. So you better be prepared to come to closing with an extra $100. Now, in this case, the buyer is going to be ready to do that because this property is right next to the student center. And so you pay a premium for it, but the appraisers aren't smart enough to know that. So again, in this listing, and this is a listing from Tony Shadid, and it's my buyer on this, that the buyer had to waive the appraisal contingency. So even though it's not going to have the right loan to value ratio, they have to go through with purchasing it. And the way they can make that happen is by bringing an extra $100,000 to closing. And really, they're not bringing an extra $100,000 to closing. Originally, they were going to put $300,000 down, and now they're only going to put $200,000 down. They still have $300,000 in the bank, and then they're going to bring an extra $100,000 to closing. So they're going to look for a loan to value ratio high enough to avoid PMI, but again, it's going to bring that ratio down. We got a question here. Let's see what it is. Why did they price it so much higher than they know it will appraise? Because the problem isn't necessarily that it's not the right value at the higher value. It is the right value at the higher value. And when we did the chapters on appraisals, we said the right way to appraise a property, an income producing property, is the value by income, which is the net operating income divided by the cap rate. But on these properties in New Brunswick, because there's so much in demand when they're right next to the campus, you know, so the kids can roll out of bed in the morning and put on their Crocs and walk across the street to school, they actually use gross rent multipliers in order to come up with what the sellers think the property is worth. And that gross rent multiplier is only a rule of thumb. It is not as accurate as a value by income. And again, people who buy this kind of property right next to the school, right next to Rutgers, they're paying a premium. So everybody knows they're not going to appraise because the appraisers are not getting enough comparable sales next to the school. So few of them come on the market over a long period of time that they don't have the data they need to make them appraise higher. Okay, so that's a good question. But if you're buying property near Rutgers, you're going to right near the campus, you're always going to have the same issue. The next thing is the front end ratio or the housing ratio. And it's called front end ratio or housing ratio because what it is what your monthly payment for your housing is divided by your income. And if you buy a house, what is your monthly payment for housing? Your monthly payment for housing is the principal on the loan, plus the interest on the loan, plus the taxes on your house, plus the insurance on your house. That's your monthly mortgage payment divided by your monthly income. And this front end ratio, typically the lender wants to see it be somewhere around 28%. Some lenders will go a little higher, some won't. So typically they want to see these go somewhere around 28%. And on the test itself, they're going to give you a problem where they're going to give you a data set where you're going to calculate the front end ratio, and they're going to tell you that they need 28% in order to qualify for the loan. But what they're going to do is give you a second question where they also give you the data set to do the back end ratio. And the back end ratio is called the back end or the debt ratio. And the back end ratio is the same PITI plus your consumer debt divided by income. Again, PITI is the principal on the mortgage payment, the interest on the mortgage payment, the taxes on the mortgage payment, the interest on the the insurance on the mortgage payment, plus your consumer debt, your car payment, your student loans, anything you have that's a regularly recurring payment divided by your income. And typically on this back end ratio, they're going to be looking for a 39% loan to value ratio. So what happens here is most people can qualify on the front end ratio, PITI divided by income. Most people can qualify on that front end ratio of PITI divided by income. But when it comes to the back end ratio, especially millennials, the back end ratio is PITI plus consumer debt, which is student loans divided by income, and then they can't qualify. It's been one of the reasons there's been a kind of a bottleneck with millennials buying houses. It's because millennials have an average of $50,000 in student loans, and that goes on their back end ratio. And what they'll do on the test is they'll give you a question where you will qualify on your front end ratio, and then you won't qualify on your back end ratio. And so it's a multiple choice question. And so multiple choice questions like this are easy because they'll say the A answer will be yes, you qualify on both. The B answer will be no, you qualify on neither. And then the C answer will be you qualify on the front end only. And the D answer will be you qualify on the back end only. Okay, so that's a typical question, and those are the typical range of answers. And, you know, as you do the math, you'll find out where you're going to qualify. Now, on the question, they're going to give you much of this information, potentially. They may make you calculate it. And one of the things that's very important to remember is that everything has to be in consistent units. So if you're doing principal by month, then interest's got to be by month, then taxes have got to be by month, and insurance has got to be by month, and consumer debt has got to be by the month, and income has got to be by the month. And they may give you the income by the year. They may give you the principal and the interest by the month, the taxes by the quarter, and the insurance by the year. And you've got to convert all this stuff to by the month in order for it to work for you, because you have to have consistent units. So again, this is a question that's always on the test. Why? Because it comes up in real life, almost every single transaction. The next thing they always have on the test is points. And points are difficult to understand, but they're extremely simple. Each point is 1% of the loan amount. And what's the purpose of points? The purpose of points is to affect the yield of the loan. But the quick answer of points is each 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. Each 1 point is 1% of the loan amount. And we want to remember that there's the thing called the rule of 8. 8 points changes the yield by 1%. And remember, the bank does things on what's the yield to the bank. So when you get a loan that's at 3%, the yield to the bank on that loan is 3%. And if the bank wants to be able to make money on that loan, 3% yield might not be enough. So now if the bank were to charge you 8 points, and that's interest you pay up front, that 8 points added to the 3% gives the bank a total yield of 4%. Okay? Now, what do these 8 points cost? They cost 8% of the loan amount. They're not going to make the question that easy on the test Typically on the test, they're going to tell you you have a 4% loan and you have 2 points. Now what's your rate going to be? Well, you have your nominal rate is 4%, and then 2 points affect the yield by 2/8, right? Because you get 8 points for 1%. What do you get for only 2? You get a quarter, right? 0.25. 2/8 is a quarter, which is 0.25. So your nominal rate was 4%. Now, plus the points adding to the yield is 0.25. Now that means the yield is going to be 4.25. Okay, that is a typical question, and a lot of times people in real life will ask you, why am I paying points? Well, you're paying points in real life usually to make the lender more money, to make the loan more profitable to the lender. But you could also be paying points in order to reduce your interest rate. So right now you can get a 3% rate, 50-year historic low that they hit the other day. But what if you wanted a 2% rate? What if you only wanted a 2% rate? You could achieve that 2% rate by paying the bank 8 points. So if you paid the bank 8 points, they would reduce your 3% to 2%. Now, why would you do that? So let's say you were borrowing $100,000, and let's say you were paying 3%. That means you would pay $3,000 of interest a year. If you borrowed, we're talking about interest only now, if you were borrowing $100,000 at 3%, you'd be paying $3,000 per year interest. $3,000 per year interest. If you borrowed the same $100,000 at 2%, you'd be paying $2,000 a year in interest. Okay, so it's always better to pay $2,000 rather than $3,000 a year, but to pay that $2,000 a year, you had to lay out $8,000. You had to lay out $8,000 to get your payment reduced from $2,000 to $3,000. So when does that make a good investment strategy? It makes a good investment strategy when you get to your 9th year. Because if you're saving $1,000 a year through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, you just saved $8,000, and that's what it cost you to buy the points. And now on the 9th year, you're going to save $1,000. And on the 10th year, you're going to save $1,000. And on the 11th year, you're going to save $1,000. And on the 12th year, you're going to save $1,000. And so just think about it. By the time you get to 30 years, you will have saved an additional $27,000 in interest. So that's why people pay the points sometimes, to reduce their nominal interest rate. Okay, and when we do the chapter on financing, we also talk about a builder's buy down, where sometimes the builder will pay the points to try to induce you to pay a higher price on the property. That's a builder's buy down. Just remember, each point is 1% of the loan amount. So if you're buying the house for $200,000 and you're putting 10% down and you have to pay 1 point, well, what's 10% of 200,000? It's 20,000. So your down payment is 20,000 because it's 10% of 200,000. That means your loan is going to be for 180,000. And if you have to pay 1 point, 1 point of 180,000, what's 1% of 180,000? It's 1,800. Now, you can rest assured that on the test, that'll be answer, let's say C, and answer A will be $2,000 because they're hoping you're going to bite and you're going to calculate the points on the purchase price. And that's not what we do. We calculate the points on the loan amount. Okay. Next, we have from the appraising chapter, a formula we're going to have to know. And how would we appraise an apartment building or that property in New Brunswick on Morrill Street? We would appraise it by value by income. And our value by income is equal to our net operating income divided by our cap rate. Our net operating income divided by our cap rate. Oops, excuse me. Okay, so first thing we have to know is what is our NOI? What is NOI? NOI is net operating income. So that's the rent minus any vacancy factors. If you have a 100-unit apartment building, you're going to have vacancies. So it's the rent minus the vacancy factors, minus any expenses you have, such as utilities, such as taxes, such as reserves for replacements, such as insurance. Okay, those are all things that go into NOI. What we do not use in NOI, and we're going to put a big circle here and put a line through it. What we do not use in NOI is debt service. So we don't use how much your mortgage payment is in NOI. We don't use how much you pay for calculating your NOI. Why? Because how much the guy who owns 51 Morrill Street owes on the building, how much he owes on the building has nothing to do with its value to my buyer. How much he owes on the building has to do with his equity, but it has nothing to do with the value of that building to my buyer. So that's why we don't include debt service in our net operating income. So again, our formula for value by income is our net operating income divided by the cap rate. And what's the cap rate? The cap rate is the expected return on an investment. And you can almost do it where you think, what if the investor paid cash for it? What would his return be on his cash? That's what cap rate really is. Cap rate is just part of the formula. So again, cap rate is just part of the formula. And if we can manipulate this formula, we could say that if we're looking for what cap rate is in terms of a formula, cap rate, we're going to move that to this side of the equation. So cap rate is going to be NOI divided by value, or what the price you paid for the building. NOI divided by value, or the price you paid for the building. Okay, that's value by income. Now, I'll give you a really quick example. I got a call from a gentleman who wants me to list his his 4-unit apartment building in Edison for sale as soon as he gets back from hunting next week. And that property has 4 apartments, all at $1,500 an apartment. All at $1,500 an apartment. The taxes on it are $10,000. Okay, that's all of his expenses for right now because he manages it himself. Oh, and his insurance is $2,000. That's all his expenses because everybody has their own utilities, everybody has their own furnace, and he wants to know what it's worth. So we're going to say his net operating income is $6,000. $6,000. And we're going to convert that to by the year because the taxes and the insurance are by the year. So that means 72,000 because 6,000 times 12 is 72,000. That's his income. And then minus his expenses, we're going to take off $12,000, right? Minus $12,000. That's going to give us a total of $60,000 in net operating income. And now his building is worth what the expected cap rate of the investor is. And usually investors want to see a 7% cap rate. So if we took that 600,000 and we divided it by 0.07, that's going to give us what this property is really worth. Now, let's do that real quick. 600,000. I'm sorry. 6,000 and 72,000. So this is 60,000, not 600. 60,000 divided by 0.07. That's going to give us a value of $857,000. So when he comes back from hunting, he's going to list it for $857,000 so somebody can have a 7% cap rate. But what happens is, what if somebody wants a higher cap rate? What if somebody says, listen, I really don't want to invest my money and only make 7%. I want to invest my money and make 8%. Well, his income isn't going to change on the building. But if we take now 60,000 and we divide it by 0.08, now the building is only worth $750. So you can see that as the cap rate goes up, the value goes down. And that's a question that's quite often asked. What happens as the cap rate goes up? The value goes down. And why does that happen? Because remember that old term you had in algebra in 9th grade? It's an inverse relationship, right? In other words, value is on the top here, cap rate is on the bottom here. And so it's an inverse relationship. As cap rate goes up, value goes down. Okay? Simple questions that maybe aren't even math, they're just concepts. All right, now a couple of quick questions. A house sells for $122,000 and the brokerage commission is 6.25% of the selling price. What's the commission? So if we were to draw our little thing and we were to say earnings, price, rate, and again, we have a times sign there and a dividing sign in here. And what are we looking for? We're looking for our commission. That would be earnings. So we put our finger over earnings, and that gives us what we're supposed to do is the price of the house times the rate. So 122, 123 times. Now, we had a question about this the other night. How do you write 6.25%? So the way you write 6.25% is 0.0625. Remember, this percent means divide by 100. So if you took 6.25, and do this on your calculator now so you can get the feel of it, and you divided it by 100, well, it's going to show on your calculator is 0.0625, okay? 6.25%, we write it as a decimal as 0.0625. If you forget that, just remember that the percent sign means divide by 100, and 6.25 divided by 100 is going to give us 0.0625. So we got a question here maybe? Let's see if our teacher's pet has the right answer. You know, I always used to be the teacher's pet. I used to hate that. And not only did
That's a compliment.
Not only did I used to be the teacher's pet all the time, tomorrow is my 50th high school reunion. 50th high school reunion. I don't know if they're really going to have it, but we'll see. So the teacher's pet had it right, 7625. That's the right answer. Okay. Easy question on the test. It'll come across in real life quite often. There's the explanation of it. Okay. Let's go to the next one. A broker is to earn a fee of 6% of the sales price of a house. And this is the way they word these, because they want to give you two steps. They don't want to make it too easy. So if the house is listed at $98,000, I'm going to have to do two steps on this now. The house is listed at $98,000, and as usual, it's going to sell for $3,000 less, which means our sales price is going to be $95,000. What will the broker earn? So we have the same thing. We have earnings, principal, rate. With the divide in there. Again, we're looking for earnings. So we're going to do price times rate. So 95,000. How do we write 6%? Well, we learned that just a minute ago. We're going to write it as 0.06. And again, 95,000 times 0.06 is 5,700. And you know there's going to be an answer where they're going to take 98,000 and multiply it by 0.06. You know that's going to happen. So again, there was an extra step here. Make sure you read the questions all the way through. And it would be nice if these were questions that were printed, because you could underline everything in them or circle it. The ability to read these things all the way through is a very important tool in order for you to pass the math part. Okay, so again, earnings is equal to sales price times rate, 98,000 minus 3,000 is 95,000, times 0.06 is 5,700. All right, a seller will pay a broker $1,000 for advertising plus 4% of the sales price. If the property sells for $250,000, how much does the broker get? This is another problem where they're just adding one simple layer of complexity, So we know that the broker is going to spend $1,000. So besides his 4%, he's going to get an extra $1,000. So what we're going to see here is the same thing, earnings, price times rate, and we're going to cover up the earnings, and it's price times rate, so it's 250,000 times 0.04%, that gives us 10,000, and then we're going to recover the $1,000 we spent on advertising. So the broker is going to get $11,000. And in real life, by the way, to Nancy, who's in the broker's class, in real life, when you're the broker, you don't want these checks being put together. You want this check to come in as your commission check, because on your commission check, as the broker, you're going to pay your E&O insurance and you're going to pay your workers' comp insurance. So you only want to pay that on this check. On the $1,000, you want that to come in as an expense reimbursement, and it'll make it easier for your bookkeeping. Plus, you won't have to pay the E&O and the workers' comp on the $1,000. So for the broker's class, Nancy, you want to remember, you want to make those checks come in separate. I like to make them actually in a separate account, an expense reimbursement account. Now, and my expense reimbursements over the course of the year, last year we ran over $100,000 in expense reimbursements. And that's not from commission, it's from Fannie Mae. Fannie Mae makes me pay for so many things. They get me my money back as long as I do the paperwork correctly. But last year we had $100,000 in expense reimbursements, and my workers' comp rate is 0.01%, and my E&O rate is 0.01%. So if I had all that, let's say my expense reimbursements were $100,000 to make my math easy. If I had all that money coming in and it went into my commission account, it would cost me $2,000 in E&O and workers' compensation. So I would always want that money not to be in the same account.
So that's 1,000 and 1,000, one for E&O and one for the workman's comp.
Right, 1% for the workers' comp, 1% for the E&O. And if you ever have a claim on either of those, your rate will go up. Okay, so you want to always, again, for the broker students, you always want to try not to have a problem so that you don't get rated higher. Okay, just like if you have car accidents, your car insurance goes up. And
I'm confused.
excuse me?
I'm confused.
That's because we talked too much about the broker stuff. Let's go over it again. Let's go over it again. Seller will pay a broker $1,000 for advertising plus 4% of the sales price. Let's forget about this $1,000 for advertising right now. Let's pretend this didn't exist. And the broker's going to get paid just his commission. It would be $250,000 times 4%, and that's $10,000. But the seller is going to reimburse the broker $1,000 for advertising, so we're going to get an extra $1,000 for advertising. So the total the broker is going to get is $11,000. The salespeople class, that's all you need to know. The salespeople, that's all you need to know. In practical experience terms, the broker's class, you want to make sure this money goes into your commissions account and this money goes into your expense reimbursement account, because you don't want to pay workers' comp and E&O on this. But again, that's only the brokers that have to be concerned with it.
But why are the salespeople in the broker's class? I'm sorry.
Because it's a review class.
That's 1/3 of the class we take.
It's a review class. And
Okay, I just don't want to do something I'm totally confused about.
don't be confused. That's an easy one. And it won't be a question. It will not be a question on your test. The way the question is written now, it will be. But in terms of a broker's operational policy, that's just for Nancy to remember when she opens her own office. Okay, and this is how we did it. Earnings equals sales price times rate. 250,000 times 0.04, the earnings are 10,000, and we have to get compensated for our advertising spend, which is $1,000. Now, this is for both brokers and salespeople. For both brokers and salespeople, and it will not be on the test. On one of my expensive listings this week, I had a virtual tour done by a professional photographer. We had a drone picture taken and a drone video taken. So it's going to cost me maybe $800 for all that. When you go to present your listing to somebody, when you're talking about what you're charging a seller for listing their property, if you're doing extraordinary things, like having a drone fly around and take pictures, you might want to make the seller pay for that directly. Again, not take it out of your commission. Because
Johnny, I basically come back from there and Bruce was having a class tonight. I said, oh shit. Yeah, I said, fuck it. Well, everybody's home, so fuck it.
Seller's not going to pay for it.
No, usually he emails me, but basically he emailed me kind of late. So I said, fuck.
Yeah, we did get the emails out late tonight. I'm so sorry about that. But we're going to, because a couple of people were waiting on the class, we started it anyway. This is being recorded. I'll send it to everybody when we're done. So, you know, no stress. Don't worry about it. All right. A man devised his estate as follows. First of all, what does devised mean? Somebody put it in the chat feature. What does devised mean? What does this word mean? Devised. When you pass real estate by your will, it's called a devise. So this means that this man died and he has an estate. There's your hint. And he passed his real estate on in that fashion. So it's his will. Steve, you got it right. All right. Now, so how did he pass his stuff along? This is a common question on the test, just to see if you know how to do math. He gave 54% to his wife, 18% to his daughter, and 16% to his son. Okay, so we've got 54% to his wife, 18% to his daughter, and 16% to his son. So what that adds up to is 4 and 8 is 12, and 6 is 18. So carry the 1, we got 6, 7, 8. We have 88%, right? And the rest of it goes to the church. The remainder goes to the church. So how much did the church get? 12%. Okay, the church got 12%. And what they're saying is that 79,900 represents 12% of his estate. So 79,000 represents 12% of his estate. Okay, so if we know that 79,000 equals 12% of his estate, how much did 1% equal? And how do we find out how much 1% equals? We take 79,000 and we divide it by 12. And that tells us how much 1% equals. So let's take 79,000 and divide it by 12. And that's going to give us 6583.33. $6,583.33. And we want to know how much money the daughter got. Well, this is 1%, 6583.33. His daughter got 16%, so we're just going to multiply this times 16. And his daughter got $105,333. Okay? And that's a question that's quite often on the test. And this is just you being able to do percentages and then to do a calculation afterward. Okay, not a hard question.
Hey, Bruce,
Yes.
didn't we multiply that one by 18 and not 16 because it was the daughter, not the son?
You're right, it's 18. And I did it on, here it is done correctly, and it comes out to 118,500.
Thank you.
That's right, because we're looking for how much the daughter got, and the daughter and son were close together, and the daughter got 18%. See how easy it is on the test to make a mistake? got to check your work. Go back and double check it. So again, 18% to his daughter, and on the math on the next one, we got it right. So we did have 18% to his daughter, and it's 118,500. Now there's a second method to do this, and this is the method of proportions, it's called. And that's 79,000 is to 12 is what is to 18, and then solve for x. This is the method of proportions. 79,000 is to 12 as x is to 18. And it gives you the same answer when you solve for x. How do you solve for x on this? Same kind of method as we used before. How do we solve for x? Well, we want to get this 18 over onto the other side. And how do we do that? We multiply this over here by 18. 18 divided by 18 is 1. So that leaves us with just x. And then whatever we did to this side of the equation, we have to do to this side. So we have to say 18 times 79,000 divided by 12, because that still stayed here. The 12 still stayed here, and it gives us 118,500. This is ninth grade algebra. This is the kind of algebra you learn when you first have algebra, and all it is, you're just solving for one missing variable. Okay, it's not solving for more than one missing variable. It's one missing variable, and you can do it this way, which goes a little quicker. It's probably less likely you'll make this kind of mistake I made, or you do it this way. Either way, you come up with the same answer. All right, after paying a 7% commission of $97.65, how much did the seller receive from the sale of his house? Now, we're gonna let you guys try to play with this for a minute. So after paying a 7% commission of $96.75, how much did he receive from the sale of his house? So remember, you're going to figure out how much his house sold for, and then you're going to take away the commission, and that's going to tell you how much he received from the sale of his house. Okay, so just whip out your phones, just try to math for a second. You got to get used to doing the math. And it's late at night on a Friday night. Everybody's brain dead. But we got to get used to doing the math. And again, I'm recording this and I'll post this as soon as possible so that you guys could go over it and look at it again. But don't just watch these things. You've got to do the math yourself. Otherwise, you're never going to get it right. These are simple problems. I'm going to put on my timer and give you 25 more seconds to do this one, because I'll rush you right off because I get impatient. But let's put it on a timer and give you 25 more seconds. I'm getting answers. We're getting some people getting answers already. All right, we'll see you in a second. Okay, let's go to the slide. Earnings is equal to the sales price times the commission. We know that tonight. The net is equal to the sales price minus the commission. How much he walks home with is the sales price minus the commission. So first, sales price is equal to earnings divided by the commission. Right? We know that from one of those three formulas. So earnings is $96.75. The commission rate is 7%. So our sales price is going to be $139,500. That's how much we sold for. And if we sold for $139,500, you got to watch the question there. If we sold for $139,500 and we paid a commission of $97.65, how much did the seller walk away with? $129,735. This is a question that is also quite often on the test because it's a tricky question. The extra step of having to find out what the sales price was and then subtract the commission is the tricky part of it. So this is a tricky math question. Now, here's what I would suggest you do. I would suggest that you work it backwards. That you take that the sales price of the house was $139,750. and you multiply it by the commission, which is 7%, or you multiply it by 90.93, which is the inverse of 7%. So 139,500, and we're going to multiply it by 0.93 because I got 7% the commission. That means that the seller got 93%, and that gives us 129,735. So that's the answer we want to get. It's 129,735. And you know, you want to double check your answers because sometimes it's easy to catch these simple mistakes. All right, another one they like to ask. Remember an acre, and you're going to have to know this for the test. And we said one of the guys in class one time invented a way to remember it. He said an acre is 711, 43 for the 7, 560 for the 11. So an acre is 43,560 square feet. So we have a 10-acre plot. So that means 10 times 43,560. And you shouldn't need your calculator for this because all you do when you multiply by 10 is add an extra 0 on the back. 43,560. And we add the extra 0 for multiplying by 10. That gives us 435, I'm sorry, one more. 43,560, 43,560. We got the comma in the wrong place. Let's get it out of the wrong place. So we have 43,560 times 10. That's right, 435,600. That's right, it's actually right. That's how many square feet we have. That's feet to the second power. And we're going to build lots that are 80 by 120. And 80 by 120 is 9,600 square feet per lot. Okay, so we know that we have 435,600 square feet, but 18%, 16% of it is going to have to be used. 16% of it is going to have to be used for streets. So that means 100% minus 16% is 84%. That means only 84% is going to be able to be used for lots. So if we take 435,600 and multiply it by 0.84, that's how much we get to have for lots. So 435,600 times 0.84, that means we have 365,904 available for lots. And if we take 365,904 and divide it by our lot size, which is 9,600, that's going to give us exactly how many lots we can build. And that gives us 38.11. Well, we can't build a 0.11, so we're going to be able to build 38 lots. We're going to be able to build 38 lots. Now, in real life, builders actually do consider 16% to 20% as the amount of land they need for the streets. A builder actually does say 16% to 20% of the amount of land they need for the streets. And I'm going to tell you something that is going to confuse you a little bit, but you're going to remember that an acre is 43,560. They call a builder's acre 40,000 square feet because that gives some room for streets. This is a builder's acre, which is not a real thing, but that's what they call a builder's acre because you have to have some for the streets. An acre, as far as the test is concerned and as far as math is concerned, is 43,560 square feet.
Bruce, can you go over your calculations on this question one more time from the?
Yep.
There.
So an acre is 43,560, and we have 10 acres. So we're going to multiply that to see how many square feet we have altogether. So 43,560 times 10. Okay, you can do it on your calculator, but I know that when we multiply by 10, we just add a 0. So we got this as our square feet, 435,600. That's how many square feet we have available to build. But we have to use 16% of it for roads, for streets. So that means our total number of square feet that we have to reduce it by 16%. Now, you can multiply this number, 435, 600, you can multiply it by 0.16 and then subtract it, right? So let's do it that way. We're going to say 435, 600 times 0.16. 435, 600 times 0.16. That's going to mean 69,696 square feet are going to have to be for roads. So our total is 435, 600 minus 69,696. That means 435 minus 69 gives us 365,904 that we get to use for lots. Now, how big are our lots? Our lots are 80 by 120. So 8 times 12 is 96, and 1 0, 2 zeros. So we put 2 zeros, or you can do it on your calculator. 80 times 120 is 9,600. Each lot is 9,600 square feet. So if we have this much total land and our lots are this size, how many lots can we get? We just divide that one, 365,900 by 9,600. So 365,904, 365,904 divided by 9,600 gives us 38.115. So this 365,904 divided by 9,600 gives us 38.1. Now you can't have a 0.1 lot size, so you would say 38 lots. Okay? And again, I'm going to tell you, I'll send you all the recording of this, and I don't want you to look at the recording and then look at the answer. I want you to get to this point and do the math yourself and then check your answer out. Because the only way you can learn how to do this is by practicing the individual questions. All right. How many acres is in 348,480 square yards? So in this one, we're going to have to convert square yards to square feet because acres is in square feet. An acre is 43,560 square feet. 43,560 square feet. And we're talking about here square yards. So now the question is, how many square feet are in a square yard? And we know that the conversion is 3 times 3, or 9. So that means there are 9 square feet in 1 square yard. So if we have this many square yards, that means we have 9 times as many square feet. So if we take 348,480 and multiply, that's square yards, and multiply it by 9, that's going to convert it to square feet. So let's do that. $34,480. 348,480 times 9 is going to give us a big number. It's going to give us 3,136,320 square feet. That's how many square feet we have. 3,136,320 square feet. And we know, we're asking how many acres it is. And we know an acre is 43,560 square feet. So that's how many square feet we have. So we're going to divide that big number by 43,560. And that big number divided by 43,560 is going to give us 72 acres. Now, we're going to start out with 72 acres here because we're going to check our problem. Mrs. Locker, my third grade teacher, would be mad at us if we didn't check our problem. So we know we came up with an answer of 72. So let's take 72. You guys, let's take our 72 acres. We're going to check our answer. We're going to take our 72 acres, okay? And we're going to multiply our 72 acres to find out how many square feet we have by 43,560. That's how many square feet are in an acre, 43,560. So again, we're going to say 72 times 43,560. That's going to give us that big number, 3136320. Let's put our commas where they belong. And that's going to give us that many square feet, feet to the second power. And if we have that many square feet, how many square yards do we have? Well, the conversion from square feet is there's 9 times as many square feet as there is in a square yard. So we're simply going to divide this big number here, divided by 9. And that big number divided by 9 is going to give us 348,480. So we can go back and check our math backwards, and then we got the right number. All right, we only got 10 questions, so 3 more to go. The last monthly interest payment on a mortgage was $825.77. If the interest rate is 7.2%, how much is owed on the principal? And again, we're going to use that little trick. We're going to draw the circle here, earnings, principal rate, and there's a divide sign here, and there's a times sign here. And what are we looking for? We're looking for the principal, so we're looking for the P. So we have to do earnings divided by rate. And what are our earnings? Now, here's the trick. 7.2% is an interest rate, and it's an APR. That means it's an annual interest rate. So this is by the year, and this is by the month. We've got to convert this to the year. So we're going to take 825.77 and multiply it by 12. And that's going to give us 9909.24. Okay, and we're going to divide it then by 0.072, because that's how we write 7.2%. And that's going to say that we owe $137,628.33. Now, you better believe there's going to be an answer for the people who forgot to multiply by 12. You better believe there's going to be an answer there. Okay. The list price was set so the owner could net $90,000 after a 6% commission. What was the list price? This is a very difficult question. If you want to know the mathematical proof, you do have to solve 2 simultaneous equations on this one. But I'm going to tell you, just remember how to do it, because you won't remember how to solve the 2 simultaneous equations, because when I'm tired, I forget and I have to think about it for a while. And I've known it for 30 years. So I'm going to tell you to solve it the easy way. And the easy way is to remember that you have to earn commission on the commission. So if the seller wants to put $90,000, let's go back here, in his pocket, right? We have to divide by the additive inverse of the commission. The commission, so sorry. Question here. The commission, the sales price is $90,000. The commission is 0.06%. So what we have to do is we have to divide by the additive inverse of the commission. The additive inverse of the commission is 0.06. And what plus 0.06 will equal 1? The answer is 0.94. So we divide it by 0.94. $90,000 divided by 0.94 is equal to 95,744.68. That's how much he would have to sell for to end up with $90,000 in his pocket after paying a 6% commission. And there's a proof to this. There is a simultaneous equation you have to solve to do this if you just don't remember this rule of dividing by the additive inverse. But the easier way to do it, because you're not going to remember that easy either, is to take each of the multiple choice answers and remove the commission and see how much the seller gets. So let's assume the first answer was 95,000. You would just take 95,000 and times it times 0.06, and 95,000 divided by 0.06 is 5,600. And if we have a $90,000 times 0.06 is 5,600. So that means that our answer is, if you put your answer as 95,000 and you subtracted 5,600, that's not going to be 90,000. That's going to be 89,400. So if you just take all the answers backwards and take off the commission, you can see which is the right answer. And so now you're getting to answer number C, which is 95,744.68. And you're going to multiply that times 0.06. So 95,744.68, that times 0.06, that's going to be 5744.68, better be. And if you have 95,744.68 and you take away 5744.68, bingo, you get $90,000. So if you don't remember to divide by the additive inverse, and you don't remember how to solve the two simultaneous equations, which I'm not going to do tonight, then that's the next best way to do it. Excuse me. And this is quite often on the test. It's on this way and also another way. When we talk about a percentage lease, sometimes it's a percentage lease that's structured this way. But this is how an office manager gets paid in a real estate office. They're going to get paid a salary, $1,000 a month, plus they're going to get paid 0.25% of all the office sales. So if the manager does a good job and there's a lot of sales in that month, it's kind of like a bonus. If her pay for July was $27.80, how much were the monthly sales? So again, she got paid $27.80 in July. We know that $1,000 of that was her salary. That means there's $1,780 left. So $1,780 was her earnings. And here we go again with this, earnings, principal rate. So we're looking for her earnings. Oops, there's my timer. So how much were the monthly sales? We're actually looking for the sales, the P. So we're going to do earnings divided by rate. So 1780 divided by, how do you write 1/4%? Well, let's look at this for a second. We write 0.01 for 1%. And how do we write 1/4%? We write 0.0025. That's how we write 1/4%. So we're going to divide 1780 divided by 0.0025. And 1780 divided by 0.0025 is going to give us $712,000. So that office made $712,500. She got this bonus, 1/4% on that. That added up $712,500 times 1/4% adds up to $1,780. That's $1,780 plus her $1,000 got her to the $2,780. So you can reconstruct the problem back the other direction, and then we find out exactly what she made. This is often on the test also. Again, here's the way it gets solved. And I'm recording this, and I will send it out immediately tonight when we're done. Question 11, a house was purchased 3 years ago for $200,000. Each year it went up 10%. What's it worth now? Now, there's a way you could do this with calculus. I'm not good enough to do it. Somebody asked, what's the percentage of math questions on the exam? There's between 4 and 6 math questions on the exam.
Eight, Bruce, eight.
All right. So up to 8. And 8's a lot, but you know, if you guessed on all 8 of them, you'd get 2 of them right. You should get 2 of them right if you guessed on all 8. All right, a house purchased for 3 years ago for $200,000. Each year it went up 10%. And what's it worth now? So the first year it was purchased for $200,000. The first year it went from 200, it went up 10%, which is $20,000. The next year it went up 10%, which is $22,000. So the next year it was worth $242,000. And the next year it went up another 10%. I'm not going to trust my quick math to this. I'm going to do it. So the next year it went up another 10%, 242,000 times 1.1. The next year it went up to 266,200. Okay. By the way, this is why you buy real estate, because if your property appreciates 10% a year, which is, you know, high, but it's not unreasonable, you in 3 years you went from 220 to 260. That means you made $46,000 in 3 years. That's a lot of money to make. It's one of the reasons you buy real estate. Okay. Now, I did it by 1.1. That's the same thing as finding out what 10% is and adding it. It's the same number. It's 220. You guys can do it either way you want. I recommend that you get comfortable with math, because you need math to do real estate. All right, last question. Last question. And this is a question that if you're getting old, has a lot of relevance to your rest of your life. Because if you want to earn $1,000 a month on an investment, and no investment is paying 3% now, no savings account, no CD is paying 3%. But if we get up to 3% and you want $1,000 a month and never touch the principal, how much do you have to invest? And that's the same thing again. The earnings, circle with the earnings, principal, and rate. A divided sign here and a multiplication sign here. So how much principal do we have to have? How much principal do we have to have earnings of $1,000 a month? So $1,000 a month, 3% again is an annualized rate. So we've got to convert the $1,000 a month to a year. So that's $12,000. And we're solving for principal. So principal is equal to earnings divided by rate. So we have $12,000 is our earnings divided by our rate, which is 3%. And by now tonight, we should know how to write 3%. It's 0.03. And so you're going to have to invest $12,000 divided by 0.03. That means you're going to have $400,000 in the bank to have $1,000 income without touching your principal, for the rest of your life. So it shows you how important it is to start saving early, because we're not going to get a 3% rate for a while. It'll be a couple years before we get 3% rates. It's why so many senior citizens are having problems. Their investments aren't producing enough revenue. And if you're a senior citizen, you really can't take any risk. All right, one more sneak question. Let's see, somebody has a comment here. Nancy, another way is, 200,000 times 1.3. I don't get that, Steve. I don't get that. All right, taxes were $9,000 a year. And this is a question they give you quite often because they're trying to trick you. And I apologize if they try to trick you. A house closes on June. And it's, you know, we do these math questions. And you say, why do I need to know this stuff? I actually had a closing a couple of days ago on 208 Washington in Edison. And the seller called me today and said they prorated my taxes wrong. And she had calculated it some weird way, and she thought the attorney cheated her. And I had to sit down and explain to her exactly how taxes work, because we closed on September the 10th, I think it was, or the 11th. And she had paid her taxes all the way to the end of September, because that's the end of the third quarter. And since she had paid the taxes all the way to the end of September, she got a credit on her closing statement of 10/30ths of the taxes for the month of September. So again, I had to go over with that on the phone with her, and she wants to now go over with it again Monday in person so I can do the math, but this stuff is important. So taxes are $9,000 a year. House closes on June 15th. Now this is the trick they use, because June 15th is not half a year. June 15th is 5 months plus a half a month for June. So June 15th is not a half a year. All right, so a house closed on June 15th, the taxes were prepaid, and that means the seller paid the taxes all the way up to June 30th, the end of the second quarter. All right, and the house closes on June 15th, so here's June 15th. So there were 15 days here in June, 15 days here in June that the seller had paid the taxes on, but the seller didn't live in the house. The seller had paid the taxes all the way to the end, but they only lived to here. So that means we know the seller is going to have to get a credit. We know the seller is going to have to get a credit. So the taxes are $9,000 a year. So if we take $9,000 a year and we divide it by the month, so 9,000 divided by 12, that's $750 a month. And so what happened was they closed on the 15th. So that means there's going to be 375, because from the 1st to the 15th, the seller owed the taxes. She paid them all the way to the end, but she lived in the house till the 15th. So she owed the taxes for the first 15 days, but the second 15 days, she paid the taxes to the end, but she didn't live in the house, so somebody's got to pay her back. So it's going to be a credit to the seller of $375. It's also going to be a debit to the buyer of $375, but that's not what this question asked. It asked if it's going to be a credit or debit to the seller, and it's going to be a credit of $375. All right. I think that's the last one. Oh no. Let's do this one quickly. Cubic yard question. Sidewalk needs to be poured. It's a yard wide. How much is a yard? It's 3 feet. It's 6 inches deep. 6 inches is how much of a foot? It's 0.5. And 100 feet long, and 100 feet. So what we have here is 3 times 0.5 times 100. So 3 times 100 is 350. I'm sorry, 3 times 100 is 300. Times 0.5 is 150. So we have 150 feet to the third power. And how do we convert feet to the third power to yards to the third power? We divide by 3 times 3 times 3, because it's cubic. So we divide 150 by 27, and that gives us how many cubic yards we're going to need. So again, 150 divided by 27. We're going to need 5.55, so you might as well order 6 yards in case there's some waste. So you're going to need 6 yards. 6 yards of concrete. Okay? I don't even know if I have another question or this is it. We'll see in a second. Oh, one more. House sells for $400,000. The commission is split 2.5 to the listing broker and 3.5% and 3% to the broker for the buy side. Many of my Fannie Mae properties are like that. It only pays me 2.5%, but it pays the buy side more. Okay, how much more will the buy side broker receive? So we know that the listing broker is going to get 400,000 times 2.5, which is 0.02. 25, and that adds 10. That equals $10,000. And we know that the buy-side broker is going to get 3% of 400,000. So 400,000 times 0.03, they're going to get 12,000. So how much more did they get? They got $2,000 more. We're going to go back to number 14. Okay. Sidewalk needs to be poured. It's a yard wide. And so what we're doing here is we have to have consistent units. And on the test, they're gonna check that you know that. And so we have to have all things in the same measurement. We can do it either by yards, we can do it by inches, or we can do it by feet. I'm suggesting we do it by feet. And I'm gonna come back in a minute and do it by yards. So by feet, a yard is 3 feet. Oops. A yard is 3 feet. I'll go back here and do it this way. By feet, a yard is 3 feet. 6 inches is a half of a foot, so times 0.5. That's what 6 inches is, a half of a foot. And it's 100 feet long. So we have 3 times 100, which is 300, times 0.5 is equal to 150. So we have 150, but this is all in feet. So we have feet to the third power. How do we convert from cubic feet to cubic yards? Well, the conversion is 27. So we divide 150 by 27, and it gives us 5.55. Now let's do it another way. Let's do it by yards. We have 1 yard. We need to have consistent units now. So we have 1 yard, and then we have 6 inches. 6 inches is how much of a yard? 6 inches is 6/36 of a yard, right? There's 36 inches in a yard. And then how many yards is in 100 feet? 100 divided by 3 is 33.3. So now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply 1 times 6 divided by 36 times 33.33. Guess what? It comes out to 5.55. Now, if you really want to do it another way, you could do it by inches, but we're not going to make you go crazy today. So you have to have consistent units. You either have to convert everything to feet and then convert it from feet to cubic yards, or you can do all the measurements in yards, and then you don't have to convert. And again, a sidewalk is usually 3 feet wide. A sidewalk usually is 6 inches deep. And a sidewalk usually is some amount of length. So these are not unreasonable questions. Did this one. Let's see what we got here. I don't know how long you guys want to go on, but it looks like I got 20 questions. I'll continue. All right. Buyer has $120,000 a year income on his loan. His principal is $1,000. His interest is $400. Taxes are $8,000. Insurance is $600. What's his front end ratio? And our front end ratio, remember, our front end ratio is PITI divided by income. And again, everything has to be in consistent units. So we have this by the year. We probably don't want it by the year. We probably want it by the month because our loan payment is by the month. So we convert $120,000 a year to the month. So that means our denominator here is $10,000 because that's by the month, $10,000 a month. 120 divided by 12 is 10,000. His principal is $1,000. His interest is $400. His taxes are $8,000 a year. We got to convert that to the month. So we're going to take 8,000 and divide it by 12. It's 666.6. And the insurance is $600 a year. We got to have that by the month. That's $50 a month. That's $50 a month. So what we have is 1,000 plus 400 plus 666.6 plus 50. So he's got 2,116 divided by his income of $10,000. So that means he has a 21.16% front end ratio. And typically you need a 28% ratio. Typically it's just by the rule of the lender. So he would qualify for that loan. Now we're going to add his debt onto it too. So we're going to have the same numbers again, all the same numbers, but we're going to add his car payment. And a reasonable car payment nowadays, you buy a BMW, is $800 a month. So what's his debt ratio? And we're going to look at it, 12,000. That's his back end ratio is going to be, all this has been converted to the year, by the way. The last time we converted everything to the month, this is all converted to the year. We can do it any way we want, as long as it's all consistent units. Remember, we had $120,000 income. Last time we broke it down on my scribbling, we broke it down to by the month, but we can do it by the year too, as long as it's all consistent units. So his principal is $12,000 a year. His interest is $4,800 a year. His taxes are $8,000 a year. His insurance is $600 a year. His car payment, $800 a month, is $9,600 a year, divided by 120 a year. As long as they're consistent units, we're okay. His back end ratio now is 29.17%. So he would not, if he needed a 29% back end ratio, he would not qualify for the loan. Now, in real life, what could he do to get the loan? He could pay his car off. That would get him the loan. Or he could put more money down, because then his principal and interest would be less, because his loan would be less. Or he could get another job and earn more money. That would also bring down his front end ratio and his back end ratio. Okay? And every day, typical questions, because every day you have to deal with this. Number 18, a buyer's buying a $200,000 home with 10% down, and they have to pay 2 points. How much are the points? That's a typical question. $200,000 home, he's putting 10% down, that's $20,000. That means he's borrowing $180. And he's going to pay times 0.02, and that's $3,600 in points. And that's $3,600 in points. The department has 10 apartments, $1,000 each. Taxes are $5,000 a year. The mortgage is $10,000. The cap rate is 8%. What's the value? Typical question on the test. Very first thing is we never use mortgage in finding value by income, because how much he owes on the apartment has nothing to do with what the apartment is worth. So first we have to find value by income is equal to the net operating income divided by the cap rate. What's our net operating income? 10 apartments times $10,000. So 10 times 10,000, I'm sorry, 10 times 1,000 is 10,000 times 12, because it's 12 years. It's $120,000 in rent. And then we subtract his taxes, which are $5,000 a year. We always have to have consistent units. All right, so what we end up here with is 115. So his NOI is 115. So his NOI is 115. And the cap rate is 0.08. And so we're going to divide 115 . So 115 divided by 0.08 gives us 1,437,500. So if you have an apartment complex, that yields $115,000 worth of net operating income a year, and you're looking for a high cap rate of 8%, that's a high cap rate, then you'd be looking at a property that was $1,437,500, $1,437,500. All right, so there are 110 questions. This is your last question. There's 110 questions on the real estate exam. You need to score 70%. Somebody took it today and they didn't score 70%. They got 2 extra questions wrong, so they didn't pass. But you need to score 70%. How many questions do you need to get right? So you need to get 70% of 110. 70% of 110 is 77. Somebody from class took the test today and they only got 75 right. And that means they didn't pass. You need to get 77 right. Now, Steve said there were 8 math questions on his test. So if you're horrible at math, you can get all the math questions wrong, but you better get an equal number of the other questions right? Because math is only 8 questions out of 110. So what percentage of it is math? 8 divided by 110. That's how much of the test is math. So 72% of the test is not math, and 28% is math. So 8 out of 110 is 28%. Okay? So 72% is not math, and 78% and 28% is math. Again, on 8 questions, if there's 4 answers on each multiple choice, which there is, and you guessed at all of them, the odds are that you would get 2 of them right. That's the odds. It doesn't mean you will get 2 of them right, but the odds are you'll get 2 of them right. All right, so that is a quickie math class for tonight. A little bit more intense than last night's insanity because of my computer that didn't work right, and the pouring rain and the bad internet. Last night was just fated to fail. So that's it. I'm going to record this. I'm going to get it out to everybody as quickly as I can, and you can watch it. I'm not going to edit it, which means that a lot of the crosstalk will be